Garrett Hart for Recovery, and with me is Nicole Wesley. She's the founder and president of Nikki's House, a recovery house for women in Warren, Ohio. Nicole, how nice to talk with you again.
A pleasure to see you too again, Garrett.
So let's talk about Nikki's House. When last we spoke 3 years ago, Nikki's House was just opening, just getting underway.
Yes.
Let's talk about how that got together. And we'll talk then again about the growth and the continuing success for Nikki's House. So how did it get started?
So my father passed away in 2017, and I had inherited a house. And I have a dear friend of our family who I consider an aunt, who said that we had a lot of recovery houses for men, but we didn't have a whole lot for women in the Warren area. So I thought about it, and I says, well, I just inherited a house. Some of the stories that were on the news when I came home, I was living in Chicago at the time, were horrific as it related to the opiate epidemic. And I wanted to make a contribution, and I says, well, here's a house. And that's how Nikki's House got started, and it kind of snowballed. I always tell a friend of mine, if I had known how much would be involved in starting a recovery house, if God had told me how much it would be involved, I probably wouldn't do it. And she always says to me, that's why God made sure you didn't know how much time and effort it would take to start the house. But I'm really proud of it.
Well, and it's so important for the genders to be separated, particularly in treatment and post-treatment, simply because fraternizing becomes a distraction and can lead to relapse and other issues.
Oh, absolutely, and one of the rules at Nikki's House is that I do not allow romantic entanglements. Excuse me, I don't allow relationships, period, and sometimes we find women play little games like, well, you said that I couldn't have a relationship in the house, but I'm not having one outside of the house. So we've had to be very clear. No meeting up with anybody, no romantic entanglements. Don't tell me you're going to go meet with your sponsor when you're actually going to meet up with someone else. Don't do it.
And the fact is that because of that individuals can concentrate on their recovery, work their process, and do the things that they need to do to get healthy, so that they can actually have a healthy relationship later on.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things about early recovery is that the relationships that we often choose to get in early recovery are as sick as when we were actually using. And so they're often dysfunctional, unhealthy relationships, and they often get people off track. What we've also found with women is that if that relationship falls apart, so does the recovery. There's a lot of times where someone will say, I broke up with my boyfriend or I broke up with my girlfriend, and that is the excuse that is being used for a relapse. So we try to get people to focus on themselves.
Well, and this focus over the years, tell me about the story of Nikki's House over the years and where you are today.
Well, 3 years ago when we came and did this interview, Nikki's House was a it was a 5-bed recovery house. Over time, we've added 3 beds and become an 8-bed recovery house. And a lot of that has been at the request of the probation department, some of the treatment centers in our area who felt that we were doing such a good job that, and we had such a large house, they requested that we expand so that they could have an opportunity to place more of their residents in our house.
And talk about what life is like for residents at Nikki's House. What the process is. You already stated some of the rules. What is the process whereby people can begin to regain some self-respect, some sense of accomplishment, and some resilience so that they can cope with their new world?
So, first of all, at Nikki's House, I have a wonderful house manager. Her name is Carrie, and Carrie and I interview women before they come to the house. Sometimes the treatment centers that they're coming from are so far away that we end up usually doing phone interviews. But I think we're both pretty good judges of character, and so once they pass the interview process, we require that all of the women in the house be a part of an intensive outpatient program. You have to complete the intensive outpatient program. During that period of time, we do not allow women to work. We do work on getting grants to help them with their rent, but we don't allow them to work because often when you're new in recovery and you first get a job, that job becomes the focus. As a matter of fact, when you're new in recovery, anything and everything sometimes can become the focus other than recovery itself. So we require the intensive outpatient program. We require that they get a sponsor within the first month. We have a large cadre of women who volunteer their services at our house to be able to give them rides because they don't allow cars right away. You have to earn that privilege, who will drive them to meetings. We also have at the house, when they first arrive, we're not a religious house, but we are a spiritual house. And so we have morning quiet time where they'll read one of the daily reflection books from AA or NA and they comment on it, and then they have 5 minutes of quiet time or meditation. And then everybody goes on about their day. We also work closely with counselors. So one of the big issues with women in particular is a lot of their addiction is tied up closely with trauma. So we require that the women in the house, particularly if they have a traumatic background, get some trauma therapy, that they're in counseling, and we talk with their counselors. We're constantly talking with their case managers. We are a house that strongly believes in psychiatric care. So you are required to take your psychiatric medication at Nikki's house, and we also stay in contact with a psychiatrist. And we also have a great partnership with the Trimble County Mental Health and Recovery Board, where if we find a woman needs additional psychiatric or psychological care, then I'm able to reach out to them, and they often help me find the necessary services for them.
It's so important to have that kind of backup, that the county has services and are standing by to be a resource as you're helping your clients, your residents at the house find their way into recovery. And the issue of trauma-informed behavior has become, and mental health issues, as really what's at the center of a person's life, and that the use, whether it's drinking or drugs, are really a symptom of an underlying disruption in their lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. It kind of goes back to the old cliche, you're only as sick as your secrets. And some of these women, they have things that are pent up and they haven't addressed them, and they're self-medicating with the drugs and the alcohol. And really the drugs and the alcohol are a symptom of a much larger problem that needs to be addressed. And so we try to get to that core and get to that root so that we can make sure that we provide them the most comprehensive services possible.
And mental health is health. So
Yes.
many things, we concentrate on physical health and exercise and nutrition, but that checkup from the neck up, what's going on between your ears, is important as well, so that we can really function and be a contributor in our community.
Oh, absolutely. I have a background of having gone to medical school, and mental health is physical health. When you're looking at a lot of the mental health conditions that we have, we're dealing with dopamine receptors and acetylcholine and serotonin. And, if you look at neurotransmitters, you would realize that they're really just the hormones of the brain. It's no different than when you deal with insulin, for example, for a diabetic. So I think that at some point we're going to have to stop making the distinction between mental health and physical health, because mental health is physical health.
And tell me right now, at Nikki's house, if someone wants to reach out to you or is interested to learn more or to offer support to Nikki's house, how do they contact Nikki's house, and where can they find you?
So there's several places that we are. We have our own website, but we're working on it, so it's a little bit down. It's nicoleshouserecovery.org. My telephone number is on there, as well as my email address. That's one way to reach us. The other resource is Ohio Recovery Housing has a listing of all of the recovery houses in the state of Ohio. So does the Trumbull County Mental Health and Recovery Board. They have a listing of the recovery houses that are contracted with them. And so we're listed in all three of those sources.
What is the one thing that has been rewarding to you to be the founder and president and watch so many things happen that are positive at Nikki's House?
I can't think of one thing. I guess we've had women who never thought that they would see their children again, or never thought that they would get custody of their children again, who now have custody of them. We have, and not just when I say custody, where they get a chance to see them once a week or whatever, they have full-time, 50-50 custody. We have women who have come to our house who never thought they could go back to school, and they've gone back to school. Or they never thought they could achieve a trade, and they've gone maybe to cosmetology school, or looked at a different trade, you know, like telecommunications or whatnot. We've had, ironically, 6 women from our house who have become either peer supporters or certified drug and addiction counselors. And we have a couple of them who I now work with as colleagues. So they lived in our house, and now they are my colleagues. I call them about other girls in the house. They call me about other women in the house. And that right there sends chills up my spine every time I think about it.
Well, and I think the magic of peer support is that people really understand what issues somebody are experiencing as they come to a place like Nikki's House. That it's that you have to have been there to be able to help people find a positive way.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny, I always tell them, I says, well, you know, the person who's the peer support now, they know what my rules are like. They can talk you through this, and they'll actually tell you, when they look back on it, it makes sense why I have this rule or that rule, or why my house manager, who again is wonderful, feels a certain way or has a certain approach to something.
Well, I really appreciate this. I'm so glad for the success and continuing success for Nikki's House. Nicole Wesley, founder, president, Nikki's House, Recovery House for Women in Warren, Ohio. So nice to speak with you again. It's so great to hear some real good success stories that are out there.
Thank you so much.